Which are the children who end up under the domain of the justice system? What are the signs to help us identify and help them? It is important for parents or care providers and professionals to recognize at-risk children and intervene in a timely manner to protect their rights and best interests. Because they cannot care for themselves and thus depend on us, the adults, children are considered vulnerable. What leads to an increased vulnerability for a child, putting them at risk? From a domestic perspective, children may be considered more vulnerable if they come from violent, exploitive families, divorced families, families with a step-parent, underprotective or overprotective families. A low living standard, a minimal level of schooling, and alcohol abuse are risk factors increasing a child's vulnerability. Among social sources making a child vulnerable are stigmatization and discrimination, marginalization, social exclusion. There are also individual factors which increase the vulnerability, such as developmental crises, a child's difficult temper, behavior problems, physical or intellectual disabilities, learning or adaptation difficulties, low self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, emotional sensitivity. The child can be vulnerable in different ways and in different situations. Sometimes the child can become a victim or commit certain antisocial actions. Who is the victim child? A victim child is the child who incurred moral, physical, or material damage by action or inaction. The victim child can be identified through physical, psychological, and behavioral signs. The physical signs tell us about physical or sexual abuse. The body can reveal fractures, burns, cuts, hematomas, bruising, bite marks, scratches, lesions of the genitals. The child may report frequent headaches. On the emotional level, the victim child can show deep sadness. Even depression, feels guilty without reason, has a strong sense of insecurity. Some children become irritable and sensitive to external stimuli. Others have a strong desire for revenge. The victim child has an unstable behavior, becomes aggressive towards those around them. They are impulsive and violent, attempt suicide, may try drugs or alcohol. Some isolate themselves. Others rebel and are in conflict with those around them. Some skip school. Others run away from home, living on the streets. In this context, a child, victim of a form of violence, neglect, exploitation, or trafficking, may be identified by observing and analyzing the changes in this behavior towards others, compared to how they formerly behaved. Another aspect is that the presence of just one sign does not necessarily mean the child is a victim. When signs show up repeatedly or combined, they should signal the adults, be it parents or professionals, to pay more attention to the case and consider the possibility of violence, neglect, exploitation, or trafficking. Who is the witness child? A child who saw an illegal action or has information about one can be a witness. The child may become a witness when one or both parents are violent in the family, when the divorce is violent, when accidentally or forcibly observes aggression among peers, or is obliged to take part. The child becomes a witness when they observe aggressive, violent acts in school or the social environment, crimes committed by strangers, even when they are manipulated to participate in antisocial actions. The witness child lives in fear of their declarations, triggering the revenge of the interested parties, and with a deep feeling of guilt. The child has an intense discomfort, which can manifest itself through depression, frustration, tension, despair, and difficulties focusing at school. The child is aware of what is happening, confused at the same time, and distrustful to denounce. This is supported by a low self-esteem and underappreciation of self-worth. Who is the child in conflict with the law? The child who comes to commit illegal actions is a child who does not obey legal, social, and moral rules and norms, has no interest in family, school demands, and obligations, tends to be friends with deviant peers, a child with destructive tendencies, no ability to form relationships based on affection and respect, and peacefully solve conflicts. A child who previously manifested antisocial behavior, as well as no ability to learn from negative experiences. A child who learned from their family or social environment to solve problems through aggressive or violent means. A child attracted by risk behaviors, smoking, alcohol, drugs, and self-aggressive behaviors, tattoos, cuts, cigarette burns, suicide attempts. Perhaps a child who experienced a traumatic episode suffered abuse, stereotyping, or discrimination. As a personality, a child with low tolerance to frustration, low self-control, and lack of guilt. The child has a false image about autonomy and individual freedom, a distorted perception of the meaning of life and interpersonal relationships. Thus, through their behavior, the child in conflict with the law expresses contempt for social activities, work, family, school, and society. Important to remember, a child whose needs are not met is a vulnerable child. A vulnerable child is at risk of becoming a victim child or directly a child in conflict with the law. A victim child in an unfavorable environment and without adult protection may become a child in conflict with the law. A child is not born a criminal, but the deviant behavior can be a consequence of the adult's response to the child's developmental needs. In order to satisfy the child's needs and respect their rights, whether they are a victim, a witness, or in conflict with the law, it is necessary to consider the child's risk of victimization, the child's risk of committing illegal acts. The more risk factors are present, and the higher the child's vulnerability, the greater the risk. And if the risk factors and the child's vulnerabilities are minimal, there is no risk of victimization accordingly. Make time to be responsive and react promptly. Protect the children.